Aloha family. It is 8:15, October the 15th, the Tuesday, here on the Big Island of Hawaii. And it is a beautiful morning out here on the lava in Kalapana. I'm in this beautiful space, and I'm getting ready to put together some retreats. So if any of you are interested in coming out to the lava and to Hawaii and experiencing 3 or 4 days of healing work, body work, the ocean, the beach, fresh fruit, please let me know, because there's a beautiful space here. We've got about 5 bedrooms or 4 bedrooms or something like that, with 2 kitchens and 2 bathrooms and 2 hot tubs out here on the lava. And so we're creating this really amazing retreat space out here. And one of the things that it's got me thinking about is gossiping and community. And I was just watching someone's post on Facebook about being gossiped about in community. And I was just talking about this yesterday, about the non-communication that happens between people when there's, a discord or there's static in the ley lines of energy, and how we influence each other so much. And it makes me go back to think about, like, in the tribal days, and how, like, these different tribes would handle these different situations, where if something came up and caused a rift, that it was dealt with on an intimate level versus including the entire tribe in a situation that 2 humans may have going on or something. And so I paused to think about what gossiping is and where it stems from and why it happens. And gossiping can really cause a lot of issues. And I personally stay outside of that realm as much as possible. Even engaging in conversation when people are around me or talking about someone else, because I realize that everything is in the moment. And, things happen, anger, outbursts, emotional, static. Those things can happen in these triggered moments, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's authentic to who we are. And then when we hold someone in that light, and then we go around in community and spread that energy around to other people, for me, I feel like that is not being energetically responsible. And what I find is responsible, or energetically mindful, I should say, is going to the source, to have the communication, to sit down and to be able to communicate what it is that happened, to come to some sort of balanced level ground again. And so it's like, okay, we can come up with solutions, but let's take a look at why this happens, why gossip happens, why we don't talk to each other. And it all stems from the inner wounded child. It stems from childhood. Because if you think about when we're children and we are shushed constantly, we are automatically taught behavior in a punishment reward situation, just like with animals. We're no different than dogs. Any other animal that's trained, humans are the same. We still experience the same conditioning. At least that's the way it has been. And so when we're children and our voices are suppressed because we're told, shh, or I told you so, things aren't explained. We're not in a space where our voice is open and accepted and heard for who we are, right? Because the parents think they know it all, so they're trying to program us versus letting us show them who we are, even as children. Well, all of that stuff gets carried over into as an adult, and we don't realize it. Like, it's on a subconscious level. And the other thing is that causes so much discord about gossiping versus actually having mindful, sacred space communication, is that we're subconsciously afraid of each other. We're subconsciously afraid of each other because we are afraid of the response that we're going to get from the other person when we go to them and tell them, like, hey, this is how I feel, or I noticed you did this behavior, or whatever the situation is. I feel as though we're subconsciously worried about being disciplined as we were when we were children. And so it's just like when we can like get outside of all of that programming so that we can come back full circle to sit down and actually have conversations with each other about the way that we're feeling. It makes it so much lighter. It's like, oh, we can like take the armor off and we don't have to carry around this like mental construct of distortion for days on end because of what one person decided to go tell a bunch of people. That wasn't really authentic in the moment. Like, it's just, or maybe it was authentic in the moment, but not the second after it. Because we get flared, we get triggered. There's these emotional things that happen because of the programming we've experienced in the past, and it becomes this thing. Mike says something is crawling up your wall. I'm serious. Well, in Hawaii, at least on the Big Island for sure, there are a lot of geckos here, and they live indoors, outdoors, so you probably saw one of these green geckos climbing on the wall. And so I know that gossiping really hurts, like I'll just use myself as an example. Let's say, and this is something that's happened to me a few times. Let's say I'm dating someone, okay? And the relationship is just tumultuous and we're not seeing eye to eye. And, one person feels one way and I feel one way and we're not really communicating with each other. The only communicating we've been doing is arguing, right? Not holding a sacred space to really hear and receive each other. Well, when we're not communicating with each other to be open and to be able to understand, our own minds start to create these scenarios that build off of the programming that we have already been running to from the past. And that causes more emotional discord for us to like not see clearly. And then it causes us to go and tell other people things about this person that really isn't true because we are not even communicating properly. It's this really interesting thing because what I realize is, and this is what I love so much about my life lately, and I'm so grateful that I'm aligning with more and more people that I can be totally open in communication with. And it's because I've become totally open in communication with myself. Right? Like as above, so below, the mirror of reflection. And I say totally, but what I mean is like as much as I am in the moment, and I had a conversation with someone who's very close to me and dear to me yesterday. And we talked about some things between each other that, I was so grateful that we were able to just openly talk. And the person said, I'm so happy that we could talk about this because I've had this story running in my mind and I didn't want to start self-loathing because they didn't know where I stood on something that happened between us. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, I'm so glad that we could talk. And of course we can talk about anything. And I was like, see how amazing it is when we can talk to each other about anything and for it to be received by the other person. That is sacred space. That is where the magic happens, when we can engage with one another and not feel threatened by the other person's psyche, because really we're only threatened by our own psyche, right? It's not the other person. It's our own lack of using the throat chakra due to all of the stuff we received in the body through the solar plexus. It all builds a story. And, it's just like, I feel like that how we communicate is very important also. Nonviolent communication is something that is taught here in Hawaii. I've noticed. I have a book. I'll show you. I didn't know there was such a thing. And I started learning about nonviolent communication. And this was after I've already been activated and I've already been upgrading to shift the way I communicate. And nonviolent communication, it says a language of compassion. And this nonviolent communication teaches how to remove certain words, how to navigate around word magic so that we can communicate properly with the mind, with the programming, with the past. Because that's really what it is. We're talking to each other based on our past experiences, even though we're talking right now, right? Knowledge comes from experience. And so it's all about how we use the experience to engage in our lives on a daily basis. And we as humans communicate with words more than anything else. And we realize we can just, communicate with energy. And so it's like, what kind of energy are we putting out around the words? And the other thing too, it's like, I often wonder if people that go around gossiping and they tell other people all these things, if they look in the mirror and think, wow, I wonder what, the community thinks of me going around telling all this stuff to people. It's like this interesting reflection. And so it's like, why can't we communicate with one another? Why don't we sit down and say, hey, let's create a container for safe space, a safe container for sacred space so that we can sit down and have these dialogues of this emotional stuff. And I find if we address a situation at the beginning like that, set the foundation for the communication first, then it makes it a lot easier. And I here where I live in Pune, it's a wild, amazing, activated community of super, just amazing open heart space, cosmic beings. This is like the most cosmic place I've been on earth so far. And it's a very small town, very small, even though it feels big. I think I looked up the population and I think it said less than 1,000. I know there's probably more than that because there's so many communities that are, off grid and off record. But anyway, it's a small community and there's a swirl here and people engage a lot. And I've seen so much gossiping about other people. So many people have told me things about people in the community just right off the bat as soon as I moved here. And I was like, whoa. And so that awareness allowed me to be mindful of my flow, of how I engage. And I'm not someone, and I am someone who, I let people show me who they are, not by what someone else says that they are. I don't allow someone else's programming to penetrate my own consciousness, or at least I like to think I don't. And so, it's like I hold sacred space for myself, so I hold sacred space for other people. Even if someone has had a really tough time or they've done some really crappy things in their life based on what they feel is crappy, we change, like we really, really do change as human beings, as conscious, mindful humans that some of us are, at least. I feel like, how can we hold each other in these spaces of these stories, of these situations, when we're constantly evolving? We move so fast. We move so fast in this space. I made a video the other day and I was talking about the now. Now is all we have, but really it's like there is no now because it's perpetual movement. We're constantly moving infinitely through time and space. So it's about the present moment and the reaction or response to it in the second after it happens. Because now's over, now's over, now's over. Now we're in a new place. Now we're in a new place. Now we're in a new place. So it's like there's this constant movement that's happening. So if we don't want to be put in a box, how can we put someone else in a box, right? Like, we don't want to be gossiped about, so why do we gossip about other people? We want the truth, so why aren't we accepting of the truth? It all stems from the inner child. It all comes from then. Because if you think about it, if we were taught how to communicate and how to be open as children, it would be so much easier through our years. Thankfully, some of us are having these dialogues and these conversations now. And so it's like, life is, it looks more promising and, it's easier to navigate through. And it doesn't mean that we stop receiving these things from the outside world. It just means we don't take them personally. We don't attach to them and embody it and like make it part of our story and things like that. I like to use everything as a reflection. Even if someone says something bad about me or toward me or whatever, I pause. Instead of attacking that person, I take a moment to pause and see how it feels in my body before my thoughts get attached. How does this make me feel? How is this triggering my thought processes? How do I need to look at this? Versus going around and spewing it in the community that so-and-so did this to me or said this about me or whatever, because I realize that so much of this life is perception. And the stories that people are telling themselves from the past that continue to perpetuate and create the constant moving present moment. And, I stay pretty detached, I feel, emotionally from a lot of stuff, yet at the same time, I feel for people in these situations when this like gossiping is happening, and I'm just like, wow, like what can we do to soften the community in a way that we can be strong in our own sovereignty of our emotional states, right? I mean, can you imagine being in a community where people are all doing their own things? They all we gather to celebrate, and we're all friendly, and we share food, and it's like this. To me, it just like makes sense. And yet, I understand that there's a lot of emotional trauma from the past that is, encompassed in our body, which responds to chemical reactions. And that's the other thing too about triggering too. If something triggers my body to cause my reaction and my thought processes to come up in a way that feels unsettled to me, I realize I've got something to take a look at. It's me. It's not someone else. This year has been huge for my mastery in my reaction versus response. Letting myself get triggered by someone else's anger and then giving that fuel back. This is the way I'm looking at it. It's like anger is a fire that is out of control. So why would I want to fuel that out of control fire by spewing more gas onto it with my own energy? That's why I feel like anger doesn't have a place. I've really been doing a lot of mindful analysis over anger these last few months with myself, because I have been around a lot of angry people in my life, and I've been very angry in my life, and I've been very triggered by other people's energy being so sensitive. I feel like we're all sensitive, but I'm talking about myself. I'm so sensitive that I was like taking on all of this anger and having to feel like I had to justify so that they could see that it really wasn't me and all this stuff. And now I realize no, no, it doesn't make me feel good in my body. The chemicals go out of whack. Like this fight or flight thing starts to happen. I mean, I don't know about you or how angry you've gotten in your life, but I've been so angry that I just wanted to rip out of my skin, just tear it off, just to get out of the release of the body of feeling that feeling, because the body's like, hello, 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 hello. The body's giving us a signal to calm down. It's like, hey, you're on overload here. And so it's like when we realize that anger is a place of internal dis-ease, even if it's triggered by someone else, we have to get out of the line of, or I say we don't have to do anything. I find it's really important to get out of the line of the victimhood of victimhood, even that's a triggering word. It's really a place of awareness, how mindful are we of who we are and how we're engaging with other people? I personally don't like to be angry. I don't personally like to gossip. I don't like to feel anger from other people, even though I can hold space for that. I understand that anger is a part of our spectrum, apparently. Yeah, I feel like it's not necessary. People say anger is a healthy emotion. I don't know who came up with that, but that is not a way that we have to find solutions. It's not. And it's because I see that in myself. I've been able to transcend the need to be reactionary in my own space. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm going to stay in that. I don't know, but I've been cruising it right now pretty good, because all I can do is work with what happens in the passing moments. How mindful I am of that space. And it just, we're such interesting, sensitive, feeling beings. It's part of our experience as a human. Like, animals feel sensations too, and they communicate in the way that they do, and we're animals too. It's just we can talk. That's the difference, is we have words to use that, and people, we as humans, get so wrapped up in the words because we don't know any different. Because if we were taught as children these things, life would be totally different. And I feel as though we have to I feel as though pushing past all of these stigma programming, that anger is okay, and all of these things, it's like, whoa, wait, time out. Like, there are much greater solutions to coming up with being able to come back full circle in a grounded state. And so it's like, how mindful are we when we walk around and talk about other people? Oh, did you hear what so and so did? And part of me is like, and I'll even ask, were you there? Did you see this happen? And most of the time they say no. And I'm like, oh, so you heard it from someone else too? And it's cool. Like, it makes me go back to that exercise that we did in school, or like in camp, where you sit around in a circle and one person starts something and you whisper it to one person, and you whisper it all the way around the circle to see if the original content comes back. And it doesn't. It doesn't. Even in a conscious circle of people that are looking at each other, whispering the same thing in each other's face. So you can imagine how information gets distorted by, trickling down through the whispering aspects of the illusions of whatever's going on. It's like, whoa, well, wait, where's the source? Why can't these two people or these three people or group of people get together and hold space in a safe container? I feel that's the tribal thing to do. I feel that that's how we can come together in these intimate spaces and create balance with each other. Because, we can have all the emotional intelligence there is and be super enlightened or whatever that is, yet we still go through it. We're still in a connected web of everyone's consciousness plus the multidimensional space, right? There's so much going on in here. Like, I still go through these deep feelings of insecurity and self-worth, even though that's not my program. It's still in there. So it's in there somewhere, or it wouldn't be talking to me, but I don't attach to it, even though I'm hearing it. So it's like, why would I take what someone else is saying about my own self-worth? And then, it comes back around to wondering, how much do we really care about what someone else says? I've gone back and forth. I'll go through these rebel stages where I'm just like, I don't care, I don't care what anyone else says. And at the end of the day, I really don't. That's what I do, what I want. But I do care. I do care what people say, especially when I care so much about myself and other people, and I want to be of service in my community and help other people. I do care what other people say. Yet at the same time, I am more about finding the source and saying, hey, can we talk about this? Or finding someone that say, hey, I need some help. Can you go to this person to create a safe container for us to get together? I mean, we can ask each other for help. There are people that do want to help each other. I'm one of them, and it's been great because I've been called upon already since I've been back on island in this community to help with a couple of these situations. And so I feel honored to be able to hold that sacred space for each other, because it's I feel like it's a reflection of my own mirror. It's the sacred space I'm holding for myself. Therefore, I can hold that for other people, even in anger, even in sadness, even in happiness, all these emotions. Because I realize it's emotional web. And our bodies are so chemically programmed by our past experiences. And that's the biggest thing too, is that realization. When we realize that our thought processes, our memory bank, the subconscious mind, which I call the mind file, has stored everything we've seen, touched, tasted, felt, heard, everything and beyond, right? Like past life stuff. And our experiences in those situations have programmed the chemical responses in our body. The neurotransmitters are a real thing. You know, the energy centers of the body are a real thing. And so when someone says something, it can trigger us and we may not know why. Probably something that happened from when we were an infant, you know, because it all comes from being a child. And then it's like, you know, when we can take a look at the feels. I've been saying that a lot lately. It's like I'm getting further outside of what I think, because I'm really not thinking, I'm listening. I'm more down into how I feel. It's like, whoa, how does this make me feel right now? I don't know how it makes me feel. Okay, then I don't have an answer yet. I've learned that a lot by studying human design these last few months, and I'm learning about my archetype, my prototype, which is I'm a manifester, and I'm defined in my solar plexus. So I've been learning about human design is derived from the I Ching, so it's Chinese astrology, which is really ancient, and I'm learning about the solar plexus wave and the ride in the emotional responses to what's happening to the outside world. And if we have an immediate answer in the moment, then that means that was the moment for the answer to come up. But really, most of us are waiting for the answer. We just don't know it because we're thinking versus feeling. It's been this interesting new shift in consciousness I've had just this year with thinking versus feeling. At a more heightened level. I've been on that circuit for a while, but now I realize it's about pausing to feel. And so if we're not pausing to feel, to engage with other people, and we're just being reactionary, well, that's a sign. That's a sign. And I feel like it's energetically mindful that when we are talking with other people and we see that triggering happening in someone else, it's up to us how to work the mastery to engage in that situation, especially when we're talking about a situation that doesn't necessarily feel good in the body. And we know going into it, or we can, you know, not know, but that it is a possibility that someone else can get triggered by opening the door to a certain conversation. So I like to be mindful of that as much as possible in the moment. And when I do open that door or knock on that door to have a conversation, that I step into it with ease and grace and peace, because I'm the one that's going to be pushing on that emotional wounded body, right? I mean, so it's like when we recognize that we're all walking around in emotionally wounded bodies, it's like, ooh, okay, can we soothe it? Can we poke a little bit? I mean, because we are triggering each other. I mean, we are using each other as a reflection in some way, whether it's yummy or it doesn't feel yummy. It's all sensations based on our own programming and how we feel. And then when someone steps in, well, they're making us feel that way because that's how we feel, right? If someone touched me and it felt good to me, well, then that's our connection and how I feel. But if someone touches me and I don't like it, well, then that's my feeling. Right? Like it's not them, it's just how I feel. Well, it's the same way in our thought processes and in our mind. It's all connected, the mind and the body. It's separate, yet here we are looking through these eyes, speaking these words, processing these thoughts, feeling these things in the body, which we think are emotions. And so it's like, of course, there's so much entanglement going on because I don't know about you, but from a child, I didn't have like cuddling, loving parents. I didn't get taught proper communication. I got taught a lot of what not to do in this life. So I've had a lot of hard lessons, you know, because I kept repeating what I was taught without realizing that it was programming and that it wasn't real to who I was. That was their experience. And so that taught forgiveness and understanding and compassion. Because at the end of the day, compassion is the soul of a warrior, if you ask me. Not someone who's continuing to fight, someone who has fought so much that now all they do is surrender to love. I mean, does it mean that tribal fighting isn't still in there? It just means we're more compassionate. And we can use that energy to create other things than versus being pissed off at everybody and ourselves all the time. It doesn't feel good. It does not feel good to be upset and angry all the time. I mean, I know there's like this level of processing that happens. And when I feel sad or I feel angry or uneasy in my body, I retreat so that I can nurture to re-engage properly. You know, I'm a Cancer. Maybe it's the crab thing. You know, I retreat to my crab and then come back out. And I find that helps a lot. I find that helps a lot. I analyze and internalize so much so that sometimes I forget to speak things out loud because it really does help to process. We can only get through so much in our own head. We have to get things out because that's how we can have these epiphany moments. Because when we're talking to other people, we're really just talking to ourselves. That's what's so cool about connecting with people that we can just unload with sometimes. You know, for me, I get in these states where it's like, I feel like I could be complaining or I don't want to like, you know, be in this victimhood of woe is me if I talk to someone about what's going on. But then I realize that that's just the ego and that it is important to communicate and it is important to have a space where we can come together and, you know, get real with each other and not have to put on these different masks, you know, outside with other people. Because that's what we do. We're shapeshifters and that's okay. We can be whoever we want to be in the moment. Even a gossiper, you can do your thing, you know? No one's telling you you're wrong or right. At least I'm not. I go by feeling, not by thought. So, you know, if it doesn't feel good, then that tells me, whoa, it doesn't mean that it's bad. It just means that there's a triggered reaction in my body for me to pause to take a look at. Not taking life so personally. Not taking other people so personally. Right? We can't take ourselves so personally. We change so much. You know, I mean, social media has been such an amazing tool in my life because I've learned and I'm learning to communicate with people without having to be face to face and get that triggered energy back. I'm able to I've been able to monitor my flow, delete a lot of texting and all kinds of things. And it's taught me to be more grounded in myself and you know, because we're just giving each other these little snippets of our lives and what we think and what we feel. And we're able to be open and a little bit more vulnerable, which is so great, you know, to really be open because it can be tough to be vulnerable around people in the flesh. It can be, and that's okay, you know, so it's about realizing that that's the way it is and to keep putting out this energy that we do align with our tribe because it does happen. I mean, we're all looking at each other right now talking. So it's pretty neat. And so I like to encourage, you know, to think about or to process, analyze the feeling of things and our influence. How much are we influenced? Not how much, but how are we influencing each other? We are such influential beings and we get programmed so easily. And so now it's recognizing that we can create our own programming. Thank you very much. And continue to share with other people. I find that compassion means that compassion is a display of self-love. And when we're compassionate with people, even if they're like spitting fire at us and calling us names and pointing fingers and all of that, it's just realizing that there's pain there, that there's hurt there, that there's a lack of knowledge around love there. That's what that means. It doesn't mean that someone's being a monster. It means that it's coming from love, actually. It comes from love. The Toltecs talk about that too. I love reading the Four Agreements, The Mastery of Love. Oh, and here's another one. The Voice of Knowledge. This is all the same author of the Four Agreements, Don Miguel Ruiz. You know, they're really short books, but man, they have an impactful punch. And I've read them out loud to a few people and I've read them to myself. And it's understanding, it talks about what they call the parasite, which is the non-self, the unconscious mind that's running these programs of the past versus being in compassion and loving our body, the suit that houses the soul. So when we love our body, that's when we really love ourselves. I'm finding that more and more this year. And so, you know, I find that when we can stay outside of judging ourselves for the things that have happened to us that we do to other people, and we can get really hard on ourselves, you know, oh, I said that, or I did that, or oh, I really fucked up, or whatever. It's like, whoa, okay, we're like, I love what Hope Johnson says. She says, we're not sinners. We're innocent. We are innocent because it's like doing harm or causing someone to feel poorly in their body is not really what we're here to do. Or is it? I don't know. If it was, if it wasn't meant to be, it wouldn't be happening. Yet at the same time, there are other ways of going about it all. So compassion, compassion, compassion. How gentle are we to ourselves shows how gentle we are to other people. And we ride that wave. I tell people, I have no problem with telling people, hey, I'm sorry. I was in a moment, I got flared up. I'm working on, my reaction versus response. Can we sit in a sacred space, have a safe container, and talk about this? What's so wrong with doing that? Huh? I'm practicing that more and more and more and more. So it's getting easier for me. And that doesn't mean that I expect that the other person's going to say, sure, let's sit down and have sacred space and talk about it. I don't expect that to happen, because there still is triggering. So it's important to remember that too. That's why I find sometimes it's nice to have a neutral medium with people. That's why asking for help helps. Because when there's two people or a group of people that have something going on and they haven't been able to communicate, having someone that can come in as a neutral medium, even if not even saying anything, I find sometimes I can just hold space and people tend to work things out. So it's this really interesting thing that we can do for each other. Why not? Why not help each other as we help ourselves, right? I mean, this is what it's all about. No one's better than anyone. It's like, I find that sometimes talking with people too, it's like, they can get, including myself, I've done this a lot too, and still do. Sometimes I catch myself where I take it personally for a second and then it's like, oh wait, like this person isn't here to hurt me. It's just, there's this programming and I'm not here to hurt other people. When we can soften up. In my life, I've had to be, I moved out when I was 16, very early. I left home to get out of that so I can be freer. And so I've had the street life, taught me how to be a human a lot. And so I had a very hard exterior and lots of walls up and this fortress around my heart that I'm still letting go of. It comes in cycles. And so it's like, when we've been hurt a lot, it's easy to understand that we're not as open to receive love. And that comes in all forms, even in the bad things or, the things that don't feel good that happen to us. That's a display of love too. It's just on the different spectrum, right? It doesn't feel the same, although it is derived from the same thing, which is love, because that's what we're all searching for. That's what we all want. As children, as babies, we look to the big people to give us love and to keep us safe and to just to be. And we all want that as adults. It doesn't change. We want to be nurtured. We want to feel safe. We want to feel secure. And if we can do that if we can do that and create that feeling in community, well, that's like nirvana, and it all starts within. It all starts in here. If each person works to have more compassion for the self, well, guess what? As above, so below. The reflection is going to portray on the outside just like it does on the inside. Because I know when I was a very angry, hurt person, I seem to be involved in that type of energy more and more and more and more. And all of the substances that came from that, the drinking and the drugs and, all of that stuff, a lack of awareness around food. I wasn't dialed into my own self-care and I was being influenced by the outside world. Although I had this like innate awareness that I wasn't really dialed in to the consciousness that I was feeling. Yet I was like caught up in this outside swirl of blindness or mindlessness or whatever it is. It's a lack of knowing. That's all it all boils down to. Because when we have the awareness, it's like, oh, okay. And then we have these aha moments and we can develop more compassion for each other. Yes, Scott Craig says nurture. Human touch is very important. Human touch is very important. And I've gone through the different swirls in my life around human touch. I moved to Hawaii last year, or I came to visit and didn't leave. So I had a staycation. And after when the volcano stopped erupting, I left Hawaii and came down here to Puna. And the island in general is, very open heart space in a lot of ways. And especially here in Pahoa and Puna, where there is a tribe feeling and people are really open and huggy and all of that. Like, it still triggers me sometimes because I've been kind of a lone wolf a lot in my life. And so I'm learning to adjust to being in community. So I'm sharing what I'm seeing and feeling as I'm growing too. And it's really great because it's like, I realize the power of community too. Like, I realize that, wow, it is amazing to be able to be in community and not have to do everything myself, right? Like, be able to depend on each other for these different talents and abilities and things that we have that we can bring together. That's why I'd love to build my own intentional community. There's a lot of them here. I like the idea of that because it's like we can still have our own space while helping each other out. And that's whether we live on the same piece of property or we're living in a different street in the same community, it's all the same. The vibration is still there. And so finding community, learning how to engage in that, what that is, so that we can be supported in life, because we don't have to do it all on our own, because we're not alone. There's so many of us that feel these same ways, and when we can come together, we can do amazing things. Grow abundance in food, health, wealth, happiness, all of that stuff. It just takes getting outside of the competition of the programming, I'm interested in working with people, not competing. I'm not trying to win anything here. I'm trying to be at peace. That's it. As sovereign as we can be. Sovereignty. Less dependent, yet self-sustaining. And we do that by helping each other. When we can be sovereign, we can help each other so much, and vice versa. It's this beautiful thing I'm learning. So thanks for tuning in and listening. And I share as I am developing and evolving in myself, and I know so many of you are too, and I appreciate the reflection in all of you and what we're doing on this online community and here in the flesh. Aloha. I love you to the moon, family.
Yeah.